But in the main, when I hear that people think career satisfaction is more important than family satisfaction, that just fills me with sadness. Probably because 25 years ago, I maybe could picture myself thinking that. So there's this like zeal of youth where you think you're going to be young and attractive and able to work full time and doing really productive, fun work. That kind of is like maybe a conception that only a young person can have. And then you get to be older and you realize that none of that's true. And that a lot of the deepest joys and significance of life comes from family, really.
So there is a Wall Street Journal about marriage as a mirror of human nature that was released just a few years ago, in 2023, I believe, that says about 40% of young adults, 18 to 34, say that marriage has actually outlived its usefulness. There are a bunch of other reports like that, even out of Canada. Angus Reid report, it's right before me here. 60% of young Canadian adults think marriage is simply unnecessary. There's a Pew Research report as well from 2023 that showed 70% of young adults think having a job or career they enjoy is extremely more important for a fulfilling life, compared to 23% of the same who think that marriage is important to having a fulfilling life. I put all of that together and I say, what do you think is going on?
Well, some of those surveys are cited in our book, I Do Why Marriage Still Matters. And I think it's because of those surveys and having spent 2 decades looking at family policy and reading about marriage, it's because of all that that we felt compelled to try and write our book and put forward a different vision of what matters. I mean, what's going on is so multifaceted, and that's not a short question. We could spend the entirety of your podcast talking about it. Certainly, cultural trends from the 60s onwards have been more revolutionary when it comes to relationships and sexual norms. And following from that revolution, we sort of, I think, have put a lot of things into the dustbin of history that we actually ought to be valuing a lot more than we do. So, the trends are towards delayed marriage, if you get married at all. The trends show that young people today, as you mentioned, think marriage is nice to have maybe, but not necessary. The trends are towards a pretty high divorce rate, although that has decreased. And the trends are toward living together as a kind of proxy for, or either a proxy for marriage or an attempt to find something like marriage. But that can often be a roadblock on the path towards achieving kind of lifelong love and stability that really only comes the gold standard for that is marriage. So I don't know, I've given you a bunch of jumping off points of things that we can discuss. But in the main, when I hear that people think career satisfaction is more important than family satisfaction, that just fills me with sadness. Probably because 25 years ago, I maybe could picture myself thinking that. So there's this like zeal of youth where you think you're going to be young and attractive and able to work full time and doing really productive, fun work. That kind of is like maybe a conception that only a young person can have. And then you get to be older and you realize that none of that's true. And that a lot of the deepest joys and significance of life comes from family, really. So I think that's something we need to just talk about. Like maybe I can take on a maternal role towards others. You could take on a paternal role towards others, but kind of like gently saying like, look, yeah, career can be wonderful. Hope you have a good one, but it's not everything. It's not going to see you through to your old age.
So then what will be your response if someone asks you, give me tenable reasons why I should get married?
There's all this research, and we took all that research and put into our book and made it accessible, really. But the reasons might differ if you're a man versus a woman. I think marriage is protective for women. We've been chastised for being too policy wonky about this book. Just to put it on the table, like lifelong love and stability, having someone's back, caring about somebody, being there for the good of the other. All of these things are kind of the known entities when it comes to marriage. So yes to all that. But on top of that, then you have aspects of marriage that we don't really talk about very much. And things like you have better health outcomes if you get married. you definitely increase your financial well-being if you get and stay married. And obviously all this research is the result of a good marriage. So marriage is something to take seriously and kind of make sure that you have a good marriage, because a good marriage will be your making and a bad marriage could be your undoing for sure. But in a good marriage, you're really getting not just love and care and concern for the other, but also a bunch of better health outcomes and better financial outcomes. And when it comes to having children, if people would like to have children, then marriage is kind of a sine qua non of protection for them and being raised in a way that has better outcomes. Not to say that, kids can't do well, grateful that they can, but just in the aggregate, the data shows that we want to have marriage as a stabilizing force for children. And yeah, it looks different for men and for women. It doesn't mean that it's not equally important for both. Did I give you a top 10 there? I don't think I did. Yeah, 10 reasons. I just threw a bunch of stuff at you.
Well, those are tenable reasons for sure. But many people, especially the younger generation, the young adults who fall in that 18 to 34 bracket that we just talked about, I disagree with you and say it's not necessary that marriage needs to be at the center of all of these benefits that you just listed. You mentioned protective for women, love and stability, health outcomes, financial benefits, and children's stability as well, to achieve the same outcomes.
Yeah.
What will be your response?
So there's been books written on the nature and of the importance of friendship. There's one we cite by, I think her name's Raina Cohen. Became quite popular, was reviewed on the New York Times, etc. And I'm just forgetting the title right now. But essentially it was saying we should put friendship, deep and lasting friendship, as the central organizing force of society. I would just like to say that deep and lasting friendship is so super important, and I applaud those relationships. But oftentimes I think there's a little bit of wishful thinking tucked into that kind of notion, that like chosen family would be better than a marital relationship. The data do show that marriage lasts longer than living together, for example. You could say in the province of Quebec, particularly, that living together has kind of taken the place of marriage. And nonetheless, we still see in the data that living together isn't the same thing and it doesn't last as long. If what people are after is lifelong love, then they really are after marriage and seeking out a good marriage. In spite of high divorce rates, marriage still stays together longer than people who merely live together. And we can talk about why that is.
Right. And I think the challenge with the younger women and even the younger men alike is choosing that deliberate constraint, like you said,
Mhm.
versus the freedom of, swipe right on this app versus the freedom of unrestricted dating, like we have it in modern culture. Grindr or Tinder just a few years ago advertised on meet the love of your night.
No.
That sounds freeing to modern culture.
Hmm.
But why would anyone choose that bondage, in quotes, especially when feminism also paints marriage as a bondage for women
Hmm.
versus the man? I personally think it's wrong to say that marriage is more bondage on the woman than the man. I think it's an equal bondage, if you want to call it bondage. I jokingly would say to my wife that, that I'm stuck to you forever. And I remember before I got married, I decided to live without a roommate for the first time in my house then. And friends asked me, the cost is too much. Why do you choose to live alone? I said, I'm going to be stuck with someone for the rest of my life. I better live alone now and enjoy myself. Yeah, but I don't know how you interpret that to the woman, to modern day woman who thinks that bondage is not worth it. Especially when you choose the bondage that has the statistics of failure 50-50, as we're told.
Yeah, no, you've found something important. I think that if it's bondage for both, and that there's there's positive outcomes for both men and for women that come if we're going to refer to marriage as a ball and chain, as used to be the case. This is what the book we wrote is about and talks about. The marriage advantage is a term, and it's sort of used in social science to talk about those benefits of a good marriage. And there are benefits of a good marriage for men, is empirically verifiable, and that those are present for women as well is also verifiable. And importantly for women, and I think this is often surprising to some, but like happiness surveys rank married women with children as the most happy of all women.